question that the Willamette incident has fundamentally changed nearly every aspect of American life.
Shit, it's happening again.
This area has been quarantined due to the occurrence of a zombie outbreak.
The drug is almost completely effective in halting the progress of the zombie disease.
Wait for the infected. The dead are rising again.
To the original game's release in 2006, Dead Rising quickly gained a cult following, but sadly, seeing as the game originally only ever released on the Xbox 360, it meant that PS3 and PC players never got the chance to visit the Willamette Mall. But 4 whole years later, we'd finally see the release of Dead Rising 2 across all platforms. So how did it compare to the original?
This area will be completely sealed off within 72 hours.
This is not a test.
So yeah, today I'm looking at Dead Rising 2, one of my favourite games from the PS3 era. As I was editing this, I do realise that I make a lot of comparisons between this and the first game, so if you haven't checked out the Dead Rising 1 retrospective yet, I highly recommend it. This video makes a bit more sense then. But yeah, I'm going to keep this intro short, want to get straight into the video, so yeah, hope you enjoy. Let's have a look at Dead Rising 2.
Dead Rising had a successful launch on the 360 and was loved by both fans and critics, which meant that it would get ported to 2 other systems, which I know what you're thinking of course I'm talking about the PS3 and PC, but you'd be wrong. They ported the game over to the Wii and iOS. The Wii version tried its best to bring over most of what the original game had to offer, but also changing a lot to make it a unique experience. Then there was the iOS version, which seems like some mad fever dream. The game also caused a bit of a stir and a few legal issues for Capcom, as the MKR group, the copyright holders of the Dawn of the Dead films, claimed that Dead Rising copied the idea of the original film. Thankfully the case was dismissed and the series wasn't going anywhere. It wasn't until early 2009 that Capcom officially announced that a sequel was in the works. This time around, North American studio Blue Castle Games would be developing the game alongside the creator of the series, Keiji Inafune, among a few other original Dead Rising devs. Over the next year we'd see a few trailers, and then in September of 2010, Dead Rising 2 would release on Xbox 360, PS3 and PC. One thing to mention about the Dead Rising series is that all the games are connected and take place within the same world. After the events of the original, the main antagonist Carlito,
I spit in the face of people who don't want to be cool.
No, not that one, managed to successfully cause the virus to spread across the United States. Over time the outbreaks would be controlled by the use of a new drug called Zombrex, which would need to be taken in order to stop someone who's been bitten from turning. The game takes place 5 years after the original, where the world has gotten used to the world filled with zombies, so much so that they now use them in game shows based around killing them. And that is where we find our new protagonist, Chuck Green. He's a former motocross champion who is taking part in the Terror is Reality game show to earn some extra money to support his daughter, after his wife was killed in an outbreak a few years prior. But after the game ends, the resort is then overrun by zombies, as Chuck fights his way to safety with his daughter into the security bunker. After this we find out that Chuck's daughter Katie needs Zombrex, and Chuck has to venture out into the zombie infested Fortune City to find some every 24 hours, as the military isn't coming for the next 3 days. Oh, that's convenient. It's almost the same amount of time it took for the helicopter to arrive in the original. But Chuck can't just wait around, however, as he is framed as the person who caused the outbreak and is forced to find out who is behind the whole thing, with a few twists and turns along the way. I didn't realise it at first, but it's kind of crazy how both games are very similar in premise, but just told differently, due to the main character's motivations. I always thought the story was never the main part of the original game, but that the survivors and psychopaths were the main event. But in this, it feels like the main story is front and centre. Now that could be because I played a lot more Dead Rising 2 growing up than the original, so it just sticks out to me more. Also, some of the survivors and psychos you meet will reference Chuck's main plot, making the story feel more engaging than it was in the first game. There are 6 endings to get in the game, which can be unlocked by doing or failing to do certain things in game. I don't know what it is about Dead Rising 2's story, but it feels more complete from start to finish than the original. I always felt like the sequel's main quest had more going on and interacting with more characters and more cutscenes, just overall more fleshed out. Then again, that could just be because I played more of this game growing up, but after playing both games recently, I still feel like this one has a lot more to offer than the first in terms of story. The best way I can describe the gameplay is Dead Rising 2.0. It feels exactly the same as it did in the original, just with a few quality of life updates. Some of the major ones include being able to move whilst aiming a gun, and also the fact survivors can now be left to walk by themselves, and manage to turn into prime Bobby Boucher when getting swarmed by zombies.
Remember when Bobby Boucher showed up at halftime and the Mud Dogs won the Bourbon Bowl, do you?
This also means they will try to fight psychopaths as well, but just try to keep them separated because it doesn't end well. Another tiny little detail which helps a lot is when saving survivors, a little icon will appear by their names to let you know they're close enough to enter the next location. It's small things like this that make the gameplay that bit more smooth. Honestly, not a lot has changed in the gameplay department. It feels exactly the same. After spending weeks playing the original, jumping into this was easy. It felt almost identical, other than the improvements I've already mentioned. A few other things is that the psychopaths are a bit more of a challenge this time round, and also you can now skip dialogue to save time when saving survivors. The walkie-talkie returns from the original, but there is no sign of Otis, and you simply just have your objectives updated once you answer it. Dead Rising 2's gameplay makes the right amount of changes from the original to not mess with the formula of what made the first one so special, but also make it more fun to play and not as frustrating. This segment has been quite short, so I thought I'd mention how the game looks, and whilst obviously it looks better than the last game, it sadly falls into the game released in the late 2000s, early 2010s that look dark and depressing. It feels like it's got this weird piss-stained tint to the world, and the HUD's accents take up way too much of the screen, making the overall game just look dark, which I get, it's a zombie game. But still, I personally think the original game looks better, just based on how the world looked a lot more bright and felt like a real mall infected with zombies, whereas Fortune City feels like it was made with the zombies already there. Hopefully you understand what I mean by that, and I'm not just chatting shit, but I'll speak about it a bit more later in the video. Something I almost forgot to talk about is Dead Rising 2's multiplayer modes. First up, there's co-op, which works just as you can imagine. You can now explore Fortune City with a friend or a random person online, which makes the experience of playing a Dead Rising game even better, and Terror is Reality, which is a collection of minigames set in the in-game reality TV show, which I can't believe I never played this when I was younger. This is a super fun mode with a lot of little minigames to play, but sadly, because of the game now being 15 years old, there really isn't anyone online. Let's just hope if they remaster it, they bring these modes back as well. It's time to talk about this game's major selling points, and that is of course its weapons, and more importantly, combo weapons. You see, this game takes a massive amount of weapons from the original, adds a few more in, but not only adds them, adds a new system called combo weapons, where you can combine two weapons together to make something a bit more useful, with a massive 50 combinations to find throughout the game. You can obtain these by levelling up, finding combo cards throughout the mall, or look them up online and make them straight away. They aren't blocked behind some sort of level system, so if you find the parts for some OP weapon, you can just put it together straight away. The best thing about the combo system is that it gives you way more uses for the more useless weapons. For example, you can turn a water pistol and gasoline tank into a flamethrower, an LMG and a robotic teddy bear into a fucking sentry gun, or even some jewellery and a torch into a lightsaber. Right, I'll ask the question, is Chuck just really a smart engineer or a fucking terrorist? Because what the fuck is that? Dead Rising 2 has really inspired my creative brain to turn some everyday household items into something more useful. So yeah, this is what I come up with. It's like you got like a fork and a spoon. So like say if you're eating soup, you can use your spoon, and then say if someone steals your soup, you got a fork to eat some pasta with if you want. Little pasta, little pasty pasta. But yeah, that's what I've come up with. That's why this video's taken so long. I've been thinking of ideas to do with like the combo weapons, just to try and do like a real life example. I'm gonna call it a foon. There's nothing like it. Spoon and fork mixed together. Gonna get Elon Musk on the blower with this. Honestly, it's hard to figure out if any weapons or items have been removed from the first game, but looking up on Dead Rising's wiki, it seems that the sequel has about 340 weapons, including the combos, compared to the original's 141. And let's just say there is some questionable weapons in that 314.
It's inflatable filth, that's what it is.
With the massive amount of weapons and combinations, there's tons of fun to be had in Fortune City. Other items such as a blender to make special drinks and magazines also return to help give you a bit of a boost during the game. Vehicles have also returned, with them being slightly more integrated this time round. Still not a massive part, but you can now pick up survivors in some of them. You can also unlock the motorbike and modify it with different paint jobs and weapons. Sadly, you can't modify this absolute beast though. No, not that. There we go. The upgrade system is exactly the same as it was in the first game. Every time you level up, you earn an upgrade on Chuck's health, movement or inventory space. But still, you can't choose what to upgrade. But if you save as many survivors as possible, you level up in next to no time. One more thing I need to mention is the fact that you can now collect cash to spend around Fortune City. You can get money by smashing up ATMs or taking part in various minigames across the world. The money can be spent on ready-made combo weapons, keys for certain vehicles, even Zombrex for Chuck's daughter, giving the game another layer of progression to try and rake up as much money as possible to buy Zombrex to save Katie, or, you know, just ride the mechanical bull as many times as you want. Dead Rising 2 excels in giving you more options than ever before, with tons of new weapons but also the combos, to turn some of the worst ones into some of the most useful items in the game. No more relying on the mini chainsaws, now you have a whole new way to make the most out of your limited inventory space. And some cool wheels to ride around in. No, not that one. There we go. Going back to this game again after a few years, I realised something. I don't actually remember that many survivors or psychopaths. I literally walked through the casino to get met with this cutscene, and I vaguely remember seeing a tiger before. I mean, if they can't make a tiger boss fight memorable, then something must be going wrong. Maybe it's just me, but something about these characters just made them less memorable. I think the original development team made the psychos more over-exaggerated. Whilst the ones in the sequel still have a bit of character, but are a bit more grounded, there are still some memorable ones in there though, like Slappy, aka Brent Ernst, a mascot whose partner dies during the outbreak and goes a bit mental. Then there's Randy Tugman. Now before I show you what he looks like, imagine what a character with the name Randy Tugman would look like. Yep, it's exactly what you think. So his story is he doesn't want to die a virgin, so he kidnaps a bride to try and marry her, that is until Chuck interrupts. I imagine this is what kids who grow up obsessed with season passes and skins in games grow up to look like. One thing I will say about the psychos in this game is that they are way harder this time round. They have way more health and can't just be taken out in a few swings of a chainsaw. First time I took one on, I was humbled very quickly. It does make them feel a lot more important, but they are frustrating. All I would say is make sure you don't have any survivors with you when you take one on, because they try to get involved and that's just embarrassing for everyone. Overall, I feel like the psychos in this game aren't bad, but just not as memorable as the ones from the original. They're a lot more difficult this time round, which does make the whole experience a lot more well-rounded. As for the survivors, they haven't changed much, other than they actually have brains this time. You'll be finding them across the world and taking them back to the safe house with different scenarios and objectives thrown at you. Whilst I'm on the subject, it feels like this game is throwing objectives at you constantly, so you're going to miss some of them, but yeah, there's never a dull moment in Fortune City. Finally, it's time to talk about the world of Dead Rising 2, and before I start talking about the bad things about it, I want to start off by saying Fortune City is way bigger and more detailed than I remember. Not only do you have a mall, but also a few casinos, a massive strip of stores and restaurants, an arena. The map has so much to offer, with a few secret areas to explore, whether that's going backstage in a theatre or climbing the side of a building and finding an LMG. I don't know why this is up here, but in this moment in time, I'm not going to ask any questions. There is so much to see and do in Fortune City, and plus all the little mini-games which I touched on earlier. Whether that's gambling on the slot machines, riding the mechanical bull, playing golf, doing this weird cash game or this ball thing, there's a lot to do in terms of minigames on the map of Dead Rising 2, but sadly, no sandbox mode to just explore without a time limit. But with all that being said, there's just something a bit off about the way it looks overall. I summed it up earlier in the video, but the original game setting felt like a normal mall that had been overrun by zombies, which gave it this really weird vibe, as the mall was still running as normal, but it was now filled with zombies. Whereas this game feels like the zombies were already there and they just built Fortune City around them. Hopefully that makes sense. Another thing that doesn't really help the game is just the way it looks. The lighting just makes it look too dark and depressing. And I know this is a zombie game, but I still think the fact that the original was still quite bright added to the atmosphere, whereas Dead Rising 2 just feels a bit dull and uninteresting. Which is a shame, because it's definitely got a lot to offer in terms of explorable spaces. So much more than the original, but it's just the way it's presented that lets it down. Overall, I think Fortune City is a massive improvement on Willamette in terms of the sheer size and the amount of unique locations, but in terms of the way it looks and the way it's presented, I don't know, it feels like a bit of a downgrade. After going back and playing the original two games in the series back to back, I'm torn between which one I like more. On one hand, Dead Rising 2 is missing that special something that the original had, but on the other hand, it offers so much more in terms of gameplay and exploration. From the combo weapons to the vehicles and all the hidden areas around the massive Fortune City, I think it's safe to say that Dead Rising 2 did what most sequels should do. Do everything the first game did well, but just do it bigger and better. And you can't argue, even with its shortcomings, Dead Rising 2 did a whole lot more, and hopefully it also gets the remaster treatment very soon, because it definitely needs it.
So that is it for Dead Rising 2. Obviously I have to put it in the tier list, and I'm going to put it in S tier. just like the original. I think this game does a lot more things well. It improves a lot on what Dead Rising 1 did, and there's not much that lets it down. Obviously the psychopaths are a bit less memorable than the first game, and the game just looks a bit shitty. It's not a bad looking game, but it's just the way it's been presented just looks a bit bad. It's the same for a lot of games coming out in that era, sort of late 2000s to early 2010s. They all look the same, they all look a bit depressing. But yeah, I don't want to hold that against it because it is a really good game. The open world there's a lot more to find, there's a lot more places to explore, there's a lot to do, there's a lot of mini games, and yeah, overall Dead Rising 2 is a great sequel. It does what every sequel should do and improves on the first game, and also makes it bigger and better. So it was no doubt that Dead Rising 2 was going to be an S tier. Even with a few shortcomings, it still is one of the best games in the series. But yeah, that is it for today. That is it for the Dead Rising 2 video. Hope you've enjoyed. Please subscribe if you have enjoyed the video and you watch a lot of the content, because I am 19 subscribers away from 300, so I've almost hit that milestone. Great way to start off the new year, and I've been a bit more consistent this year. This is the third video in a row weekly, so hopefully I can keep that going. Next week's video won't be a Dead Rising retrospective, it'll be something a bit different, but then after that it'll be a retrospective. I did explain that in an update video if you want to watch that as well. But yeah, it's going well, keeping the consistency going, so hopefully I can carry on. And next up will be Dead Rising 2 Off the Record. It's a game I haven't really played a lot of in the past, so it's going to be fun for me because it's basically like playing a new game. So yeah, I am looking forward to that. So yeah, that will be out within the next 2 weeks, so keep an eye out for that. Best way to keep up to date with the channel is to subscribe. I post a lot on the community/posts tab on my channel, so that is the best way, honestly, to keep up to date. And yeah, if you have enjoyed this video, please leave a like. If you haven't already watched the Dead Rising 1 retrospective, I highly recommend that as well. Not much else to say. Thank you for watching, and as always, I'll see you when I see you.